Good evening. My name is Amy Nissenson, and I have the immense honor of serving as president of the Jewish Community Federation of Richmond. Thank you for joining together tonight as we do what Jews have done for generations. In times of joy and in times of sorrow, we come together. We gather in strength and solidarity, in community, in support of one another, and in recognition of the unity of the Jewish world. We gather tonight, we need each other, we need to know that the strength of our people is everlasting and resilient. That together we will get through these dark days and emerge stronger and more unified. Yet, as we gather tonight, we also mourn the over 1,400 men, women, and children who were brutally murdered just 26 days ago. We remember that never again was not just a saying, but a promise. We also gather together in prayer and longing for the safe return of the 230 held hostage by brutal, inhumane terrorists whose only aim is to extinguish the Jewish light forever. We gather in strength, knowing that our homeland can and will defend Israel, and that we are here to join in the fight always. I ask if you are able to please rise and join together in the lighting of the candle at your table, if everybody can find the candle. And if one person would light it, that would be great. Okay. We're going to light the candle at your table in memory of those we have lost, the brave soldiers of the IDF, and for the hostages we pray return safely to their families soon. Banu Choshek Lagarish. Tonight we come together to drive away the darkness. In our hands is light and fire. Everyone carries a small light, and together we will create the light which drives back the darkness. Tonight is about action, education, and unity. Tonight is about the power of our Jewish Richmond community. Thank you for being a light amongst the darkness and joining us tonight. Everybody got? Okay. It is now my honor to introduce Rosette, a Richmond-based string quartet that has been creating unique concert experiences for audiences since 2015. And you guys can sit down if you want, sorry. Rosette will play a selection of Israeli and Jewish music as we take a moment to connect, remember, and reflect. Whoops. Please stand again, sorry. As we begin the Hatikva, the Hope, Israel's national anthem. Sorry about that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ellen Cockerham Riccio. I am one of two violinists in Rosette, and we are so grateful that you have invited us to be a part of this evening. We are going to play a few selections for you tonight of a few different pieces by different Jewish composers. And each member of the quartet is going to take turns introducing the pieces. But first, I wanted to introduce us to you. So like I said, my name is Ellen. Also on violin is Teresa Gold. And on viola, we have Kimberly Ryan. And on cello is Steph Barrett. And Steph is actually going to introduce the first piece.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to move on to a really, really beautiful movement of Fanny Mendelssohn's String Quartet in E-flat major. I'm sure that some of you are familiar with her very talented, famous brother, Felix Mendelssohn. She is a female Jewish composer born in 1805, and her brother are just incredible young musicians. Their parents provided for them a really broad, in-depth education, and by the time they were both 10 to 12 years old, they were performing and composing just in incredible ways. They were both pianists. And when she became of age, her father sent her a letter telling her that it was time for her to, take her place in society. As a woman at that time, women were not allowed to perform in public, and that she needed to, fulfill her roles in society. And so she did that. She became a mother and a wife, but she started taking over the family Sunday salon series. So a lot of chamber music that she afforded her an opportunity to continue to compose and to perform in these private, wonderful events that were highly praised. And her brother thought the world of her, even though he had a flourishing career at the time, and would send her copies of his scores for her to look over and criticize, and they had a beautiful relationship. She died rather young when she was 41 years old, but she did get to witness some changes in society for female composers, which is really amazing. I'm glad she was able to see that. But we're really, really fortunate to have her music. She's among the first female composers to have her work published, so we're happy to play this for you all tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm Kimberly Ryan playing viola this evening. Our next piece is by the Swiss-American composer Ernest Bloch, born in Switzerland in 1880. This piece is his prelude for string quartet. It's very powerful and introspective and was written actually upon his leaving the Cleveland Institute of Music, where he was the first musical director. His works reflect a deep connection to his Jewish heritage, as well as lots of global influences, and his compositions continue to be performed because they're so innovative and really beautiful.
Hello, everyone. I'm Teresa Gold, and we have so been honored to be a part of your evening tonight. And my whole goal was to not cry, and I already didn't do that. But for our final thing that we're going to play for you tonight, we're going to close our portion of it with O Say Shalom, which means we pray for one thing above all, that for Israel, for the Jewish people, and for the world, that there should be peace.
Oh my gosh, you can come with me. Y'all can, yes. Wow, they had me at Oseh Shalom, and I did shed a tear. So thank you for that amazing, beautiful, meaningful performance, Rosette. Everybody, one more round of applause. My name is Shelley Golden, and my husband, Wynn, and I are honored to join Charlie and Ann Shear, this year's Grand Event co-chairs. It has so appropriately been changed to the Grand Response in light of current times. When Wynn and I were asked to co-chair, we were thrilled to say yes and support the Federation and our community. After October 7th, when the need to pivot to the Grand Response was evident, we were even more energized to serve our Jewish community and make this event a success. Speaking of success, just look around. Take a minute to digest. As of this morning, we had 453 people here tonight in this room. Thank you to the event hosts who helped make this possible. Please stand and let everybody know who you are, and your efforts are so appreciated. We feel privileged to be a part of this strong, vibrant community and to be with each one of you tonight. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us and showing your support during the most difficult time. Kol Yisrael arevim zeh lazeh. All Jews are responsible for one another. This is a Talmudic phrase most often used as a call to action, a symbol of the responsibility we feel for the well-being of others. It is a sign of unity and strength, and it reminds us that we are never truly alone in our struggles. That is what tonight is really about, the strength of being together, recognizing our connection to each other, to Israel, and to global Jewry.
Thank you. And Shelley, Charlie, and I could not agree more. The last few weeks have been traumatizing and scary. At the same time, we've been reminded of just how important community is. Our system stretches throughout Greater Richmond, Israel, and the world, and it is built for times like this. Charlie and I support the Federation as a means to provide financial and other resources to multiple Jewish agencies and organizations in our area, to fund vital programming, advocacy, and leadership development, and to support Jews in Israel and all over the world. Richmond is blessed with outstanding professional leaders who serve our community with strength, grace, and dignity. These special individuals have made the vocation their passion, and we thank them for their outstanding leadership, enthusiasm, and vision. Dan Brandeis, Orly Lewis, Mo Funk, Rabbi Alicia Paul, Sam Asher, Rindy Kruder, please stand so that we can say thank you. We would also like to make special mention of the outstanding professionals who are supporting our university students at VCU and the University of Richmond Hillels, as well as VCU's Chabad on campus. Joel Bond and Josh Jeffries, along with Rabbi Kranz, your work is critical at this time, and we are grateful for your caring and guidance for Jewish students. We are also joined by an amazing group of congregational rabbis who share a common vision for our community, one where everyone is included, engaged, and fulfilled. I ask that our synagogue rabbis stand and accept our deepest thanks for your work and guidance. Lastly, a big thank you to Sandy Davis and the entire Federation team who organized and made all of the arrangements for tonight's event. This is in addition to the unprecedented amount of additional work that they have been handling during this past month. So please give them a round of applause. Win.
Hello, I'm Win Golden, better known as Shelley's husband. So during these most difficult moments, having allies in elected offices is critical. We are blessed to have support that is longstanding, steadfast, and bipartisan throughout our federal, state, and local offices. We express our deepest gratitude to Governor Glenn Youngkin, Lieutenant Winsome Earl Sears, and Attorney General Jason Miyares. I checked with him before, that's how you pronounce his name, because he was here earlier. We thank them for standing with Israel and Virginia's Jewish community in good times and in bad. Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney, who was with us earlier as well, has been a staunch supporter of our community and the Federation, and we look forward to celebrating another Hanukkah and Jewish American Heritage Month with the mayor in coming months. We are also deeply grateful to our Virginia congressional delegation for standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel during these difficult times. Our thanks go to Senators Tim Kaine and Mark Warner, and Representatives Rob Whitman, Abigail Spanberger, and Jennifer McClellan, whose District Director, Charity Howell, is with us tonight. Where are you, Charity? Go ahead and stand up for us. Where are you? Is she here? She's here, I promise. We thank them all for their principled and steadfast support. And finally, throughout the state capitol, Israel and the Jewish community continue to see bipartisan support. Many from our local delegation are joining us tonight. Please stand and be recognized. Senator Siobhan Donovan. Delegate Betsy Carr. Delegate Skylar Van Valkenburg. And Delegate Rodney Willett. We thank them for their service and their unwavering support. The Federation's mission is global in scope, but maximizing the impact we have right here in Richmond is a core value. Thanks to the generosity of our corporate partners, we are able to amplify our collective strength and make Richmond, Virginia, a better place for everyone. We appreciate each one of our generous partners who are supporting us this evening. Starting with our lead sponsors, Bon Secours, Allianz, followed by our supporting sponsors, Burke and Herbert Bank, Broadway and Richmond, South State Bank, and Wegmans. And then lastly, this is where Daniel kind of went off the rails a little bit. He put in here a few sentences of personal impact or thought. So we'll let's see, how many, there might be a couple more than a few. But I just wanted to share an anecdote that was really special to me and special to Shelley that we shared this past weekend when we were celebrating Shelley's birthday, 29, I believe? And in Charlottesville this past weekend. We had a wonderful meal with Richard and Ellen. But, when we got back to our hotel room, we were just twirling on the bad news, looking at our phone, just really getting kind of overwhelmed by it all. And some of the things that happened on UVA's campus certainly didn't help. And it was made even worse on our way home when we went by this bridge that students paint with messages, and there was an anti-Israel message on it. And it just, we went to bed just not in a great mood. And we woke up the next morning not feeling really any better, honestly, and I decided I was going to get up and go for a run. And I ran through or went across that bridge, and I was greeted by a message that said, "Let Israel live." It had said something else before. I'm not going to give light to what it said before, but it had said something else before. Let Israel live. And I'm thinking, gosh, I'm going to take my phone, and I'm going to take a picture, and I'm going to take it back to Shelley, and it'll be the best birthday gift she could possibly have. But I didn't have my phone, so I had to run back, get my phone. And just in my paranoia, I'm like, they're going to paint that thing over before I get back. And I ran faster than I've run in years. And I got there, and it was still there, and I was screaming and took the picture, got back to the room and showed it to her, and I said, Shelley, I didn't do much in the way of getting your birthday gift, but, this is my birthday gift to you. And it just caused us to reset and focus on on light in darkness. And I just want you all to remember that when you're feeling overwhelmed by it all, there is light out there. This room is full of it. It's full of light. So remember the light.
Well, I'll lighten the mood just a little before I get to sort of the meat and potatoes, but we have such a depth of community here in Richmond, and it's an honor for Ann and I to co-chair this event with Shelley November Golden and her wonderful husband Wynn. And the November name is important, and Richard and Ellen are sitting up front. When I was 7 years old, I would go out and shoot baskets lots of afternoon. My next door neighbors were none other than Herman and Irene November, Richard's parents. It was a highlight for me every day when Herman would come driving back from his work in his four-door 1970s era sedan. And here we are 50 years later, and to be teaming with a member of the November family. Richard and my dad are lifelong best friends, really very meaningful, and just one example of the sort of community we enjoy in Richmond and Central Virginia. So big event. It's been just less than a month since the largest mass killing of Jews since the Holocaust. I still struggle to say those words and to find the words to capture what this moment feels like and what it means for the Jewish people. I struggle to adequately explain to non-Jewish friends and colleagues why the hurt we are all feeling is so deep. But I've taken strength in the knowledge that I am not alone. We are not alone. I am so proud to be a part of this show of strength tonight. This community needs for each of us to be present, engaged, and active. At the same time, I know that our community is here for each of us as well. Our spiritual leaders, synagogue communities, JFS counseling, Hillels, and student organizations, and of course our federation are here to support each of us. In so many ways, our community is built to facilitate joy, but it is also here, undoubtedly, to see us through the unimaginable. That's what we must do for each other now. Be there for one another through the pain and the anguish, fear and noise. Israel and the Jewish people face enormous challenges ahead, but our resilience is just as vast. That is why we gather tonight, because Israel's fight is ours, and our support is needed to heal and sustain our eternal homeland, quite possibly more now than ever before. Tonight, our program is designed around our response to our darkest day, and that response is donate, educate, and advocate. We have an opportunity to be part of the most important and largest Jewish Federation campaign in history, and to learn from those most impacted about how we can assure that the support for our cause, both locally and within Israel, remains strong. I have the honor of welcoming our first guest, Liron Behar. Liron was born in Kfar Saba, Israel. She has traveled the world following her father's work in Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including posts in the Ivory Coast, Chicago, and Belgium. Liron served in the IDF Education and Youth Corps, where she trained and educated soldiers on Israeli history. She lived and worked in our partnership community of Hadera before joining the Jewish Agency's Shaliach program. Currently, Liron is starting her second year as a long-term Shlicha emissary at the Israel Center. This is a long name. Israel Center within Jewish for Good at the Levin JCC in Durham, North Carolina, which is a place, for me, it's kind of a holy place, as it's the home of my beloved Duke Blue Devils. So I know you all love Duke here. Please welcome Liron.
Shalom. My name is Liron Beal. I grew up in Kfar Saba, Israel, and I'm currently starting my second year in Durham, it is a long name, as the Israel Center's Community Shlicha, or emissary, at the Levin JCC in Durham. I came here today to share with you my point of view on the last occurrences in Israel and the US. On October 7th, I was sitting with a group of my Israeli and American friends on the lawn after eating a Shabbat dinner. It was a special night, one of the first times that both groups came together. Our American friends, not Jewish, listened patiently while we sang songs and did kiddush in a language they did not understand. At some point, one of the Israelis received an alert from a news app saying there are rocket sirens in Beersheba. All the Israelis, including me, picked up our phones and quickly made sure our loved ones were safe. We didn't think anything of it, being used to situations like this. That same night, I was woken up at 3 a.m. by another friend calling, telling me to open the news right now. Since then, I feel like time has stopped. And every day, I relive October 7th, finding out worse news than the day before. Sitting alone in my apartment, watching the news that night, I thought this was the worst it could ever get, but I had no idea of the kind of things that I'll have to face, personally and at work from now on. I want to share one of the many dilemmas that we've had to face daily since then. A group of Israeli families wants to have a Shabbat potluck on Friday, to come together in mourning and in strength. They plan to meet on the Jewish campus at the JCC, right next to the synagogue and the Jewish day school. They have to make sure that there will be enough police cars available on site. Let's not forget, this is after they had to cancel a similar event the week before because Hamas called for Friday, October 13th to be a worldwide attack on Jews. Meanwhile, a pro-Palestinian group gathers to protest weekly in Raleigh, NC's capital. They don't even ask for permission. Nevertheless, security. Why is that? I received a link the other day from one of the universities for filing reports against Zionist harassment. I want to quickly share another story. Last year, I had the privilege to attend a night with former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett at Duke University. Not a man I always agreed with, but an Israeli nonetheless, from the Knesset, and I had to be a little proud. We were alerted in advance that there would be a protest during the first 10 minutes, and so there was. We were also told that any student that would leave during the talk would have received a free lunch on the lawn outside, and so many did leave. I found myself walking out to a circle of about 30 students yelling about Israel murdering babies and shouting the dreadful word, Intifada, Intifada. I came close, offered to step in the circle and talk, not yell disinformation. I was yelled at and bullied, told that I don't know what Israel is, and that since we were in a university, I should go to the library and educate myself. A few hundred people, Israel supporters, stepped out of the auditorium where the talk was held and walked aside the protest straight to their cars. Some stopped to take videos and continued on. I'll get to that in a minute. I was pulled away to the shuttle by a worried friend. We got on the bus. This is when I should probably tell you that I decided that day to wear a mask that said Israel. This is still during COVID. A girl from the protest, wrapped in a Palestinian flag, wearing a hijab, looked at me, looked back at her friend, and said, "Come sit next to me, I'm scared. There's an Israeli here." I grew up in a Zionist household, to a mother who I can only call my idol, and a father who devoted his life to Israeli advocacy in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And you can probably see how that affected me. I was told as a kid in Israel to notice where I was going, and when I got on a bus, to notice if anyone's wearing long coats. If it's the summer, get off. If they're sweaty and nervous, get off. If they bomb, you run to shelter. If you're outside, you lay on the ground. Intifada is when people die. When my friend in first grade lost his mom. I was told in Europe as a child not to speak Hebrew in public places and check my dad's car for suspicious objects. I stood up from the age of 5 in Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, and cried over every soldier, and joined the army at 18 without a single question in mind. I went on a trip to Poland when I was 17, something every student in Israel does, and I can tell you, when you come back from Poland, a year before your military service, you know why, and you know you must, because we have nowhere else to go. Many things worry me today, and in the past few weeks, the things that worry me most is the world's short memory. I grew up learning about every war, about the Holocaust, about pogroms, about rebellion, about unity, about peoplehood, the immense strength of the Jewish people, and also, unfortunately, the horrors of what people are capable of. As an emissary of the Jewish Agency, I've been told the past weeks not to wear Jewish symbols, not to put up an Israeli flag. I was told not to get out of my house on certain days because it's too dangerous. I was told not to talk about certain things because they're too much, too visual, too scary. And I have to say, I'm not sure what we're waiting for. Have we not seen in the past 3 weeks what will happen if we stay silent? I saw a video of a student in UNC less than 20 minutes away from my house yelling, "We are all Hamas." I saw swastikas in Times Square and a crowd yelling, "Gas the Jews." Headlines such as, "A student was attacked by a pro-Palestinian activist." A store in Turkey put up a sign saying they won't sell to Jews. Letter after letter from university officials and professors calling to end the Israeli occupation, saying not one word about Hamas or terror or kidnapping innocent civilians, tearing families apart. Never again is now. Ending Hamas massacre of Jews is now. Being Jewish and proud is now. Supporting the only Jewish state is now. Fight now. It's complicated. Let's figure it out. I grew up in the most complicated country in the Middle East. I know what it's like to question Israel's action without questioning its existence. And honestly, that's not even where I am right now. I want everyone to care as much as I do for my friends that were kidnapped and we still don't know where they are, to care about the children who will never see their parents again, for the hundreds of bodies not found or not identified, for the millions of people who will never live the same life. I want to hear the world say they're against terror, that Hamas is ISIS, that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and they are willing to fight to end terror. Anything other than that isn't enough. To conclude, my expectation from you, the Jewish community here in the US, is this: don't hide. Choose to bind your fate with Israel and the Israeli community. Help in any way you can. Speak up to hate, fake news, and misinformation. Remind the world of the horrors it has been capable of in the past. Fight to bring back the hostages. Pray for my recruited friends and family to be home safe. Pray for the innocent people of Gaza to be freed from Hamas terror too. Donate if you can to help restart the many shattered lives. And most importantly, be here the day after, because history has shown us, and today is showing us, that we're stronger when we're together. The Jewish community worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Liron. That was so powerful, and I am so grateful that we have you in our country and in our region. Thank you. Richmond took an important step forward in Israel education by investing in our community's first shaliach in over a decade. Shahar Vaknin began his tenure in late September. Unfortunately, shortly after the attacks, he returned home to serve his country, unfortunately for us, but very understandable for him. And we hope to welcome him back soon. Please join me in watching a short message from Shahar.
Hi everyone. For those of you who doesn't know me, my name is Shachar Vaknin, and I'm your Israeli community Shaliach at the Federation. I came to Richmond about a week before everything started in Israel, and I decided that I have to go back, especially after finding out that a family member of mine was at the party. After coming back to Israel, or a day before I came back, before my flight, I got the notice that my cousin was found dead. And when I came back, I went to the Shiva. That's how I spent my first week at the Shiva, and funerals of other people I know, people I grew up with in my small moshav, or close friends of mine as well. So yeah, ever since I got back to Israel, everything has been pretty gloom and dark. A lot of funerals, a lot of Shivas, and there are still names of people I know that are missing, and people don't know, no one knows what's going on with them and where they are, if they're hostages and have been kidnapped, or their body hasn't been identified yet. So everyone is super tense and everything is very, very difficult. At some point I decided that sitting at home is not good, and I went to help my uncle. He is a farmer and he has some farmlands around my area, and because his workers are war Arab at least, his workers, they're not working at the moment because a lot of them have been shown sympathy with Hamas and the actions they took. So my uncle is stuck without any employees and any help. And not just him, a lot of farmers all across Israel actually are stuck with no workers. So I went there to help a little bit. But yeah, again, the situation in Israel is not the brightest, as I'm sure all of you know. There are a lot of rockets every day, basically to all across Israel. And there are still names and people that are found dead or found as hostages every day. And just when you think it's done, it comes up with a new name that you know personally and was a good friend of yours. It's not easy. It's a long fight. It's gonna be long. And there's no question about it. We will prevail and we will come up on top. It's just a matter of what will happen until then. But I do thank all of you for the enormous support you show us and the help you send to us. And I know it's not easy being a Jewish it's not easy being Jewish anywhere around the world right now, but especially being pro-Israel and on that side of the story. So props to you. Stay safe, please. No need to go to rallies if you feel like it's endangering you. It's not worth it. So thank you so much for the fight you're putting up and all the love and help you send. And yeah, we will come up on top. Stay safe.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Green. Not to kill the seriousness of the mood, but before I get started, I just want everyone to know that when this speech is over, I am 100% calling my mother and telling her that I played the Altria Theater. So, and I am not telling her that I was in the basement. So, I'm Brian Green. Richard Thalheimer and I are co-chairing this year's annual campaign for Federation. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight to support our brothers and sisters in Israel and around the world, and including right here in Richmond. My job tonight is very simple. My job is to ask you for money, like a lot of money. October 7, I think we can all agree, was one of the darkest days in our history. No doubt, this is a generational moment. How we respond will forever impact Jewish life around the world. It's definitely in Israel, in our country, in Virginia, and in Richmond. The rebranding of tonight's event to a response is a recognition that we as Jews must come together immediately to help Israel, but it's more than that. It's to accelerate the advancement of Federation's mission, especially in light of the recent anti-Semitism. Federation exists to strengthen Jewish identity, to foster Jewish continuity, and to inspire connections to Israel and world Jewry. That's what we do. We do it every day. We're damn good at it, and now it's time to step it up. And stepping it up is exactly what the diaspora has been doing for the last 3 weeks, in a big way. Within 5 days after the attacks, the Jewish Federations of North America had launched a historic $500 million campaign as a first step to help those who desperately need the money in the programs in Israel. The money we raise in Israel supports that goal. Astonishingly, the JFNA hit that goal in less than 2 weeks. As of this afternoon, if you clap for that, you're really going to clap for this. As of this afternoon, the 146 federations of which Richmond is one has raised $602 million. The problem is that the challenges keep growing, the needs keep growing. So as I said, that is a first step. We are going to continue to raise money. Richmond's portion of the $500 million is $2.1 million, and that is a huge ask for a community of our size. But together, we are getting it done. Our Israel Emergency Campaign, led by Nanette Shore and Josh Goldberg and numerous volunteers, as of this afternoon, had raised over $930,000 in the last 3 weeks alone. Every single penny of the money that's raised goes directly to those who need it the most. No, there are no admin fees, nothing is taken out. It all goes to help the people. In the short term, these dollars have gone to programs such as hospitals and helping them purchase equipment. They've helped the over 200,000 Israelis who are displaced because they had to move because they live too close to rockets, if you can imagine. They go to victims of terror. And when I say that, I mean psychological and mental health services and trauma services and search and rescue. You can imagine when you have mass casualties like you've seen, the search and rescue is, to do that with grace and integrity is a huge challenge. There are over 115 organizations that have received money from JFNA so far. Over $147 million has already been allocated to the field and is working for Jews. So that's a phenomenal start, and we can all be very proud of that. But as I said, the needs are expanding, the challenges are growing, and we have to do more. So, on your table is a pledge card. Does everyone have one? There's piles of them. If you don't have one, raise your hand. I'm sure that we will get you one. It has a QR code on it for those who would prefer that. If you've already given to the Israel Emergency Campaign, thank you, thank you, thank you, and I ask that you please consider giving more. If you have not given, please give generously. Now, the white side of the card is for our Federation annual campaign. Our goal this year is to raise $3.1 million for the campaign. So yes, we are running 2 campaigns at the same time, and yes, I am asking you to give generously to both of those campaigns. And I want to talk briefly about the campaign because the importance of our annual campaign has never been so visible as it has the last 3 weeks. So we all have our Federation happy stories, right? We all have moments that we look at where a program or a service that is funded or supported by Federation directly impacts you or someone in your household. I call those my Federation happy stories or happy moments. For Ruth and me, it's sending our kids to Aleph Bet preschool. It's watching them grow at Redland Torah Academy. It's watching them build rock-hard, solid Jewish foundations and receive glorious secular education at the same time. Our son is active in BBYO, thank you. Thank you, I'll be sure to tell my kids you clap for them. Our son is active in BBYO, another Federation partner. He has a network of best friends who are Jewish all over Richmond, all up and down the East Coast. In the past few months, he's approached Jewish Student Union. I think I saw the Shermans over here. They go into high schools, and for the first time, at a public school in Richmond, at his public school, there is a Jewish Student Union, a Jewish club in his high school. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Ruth and I met 25 years ago at a Jewish Federation leadership event. I was almost 30. Ruth was almost like 12. But, you know, the heart wants what the heart wants. So those are just some of our family happy moments. I know you have your own as well, but what Federation does goes beyond our families, our immediate families. And I saw this globally firsthand when I went to Poland a year and a half ago and saw the incredible work that our Federation partners do at the Ukraine border. And the passion and the commitment that they have when they do their work is incredible. I've seen it this past 3 weeks on college campuses. I was breaking down when I was practicing this when I got to this part. What our Hillels and Chabads on campuses have done have been nothing short of a miracle in the last 3 weeks. To have college kids that don't feel safe and need somewhere to go, and the parents aren't there, so where do they go? They've gone to Hillel, and in our own backyard right here, they've gone to Jewish VCU. This year alone, Federation will spend well north of $100,000 to serve Hillels across the Commonwealth and Jewish VCU, like I said, right here, and we could walk to it if we wanted. I've also seen it in other agencies like JFS with their care line. I could regale you with statistics about how many of our most vulnerable Jews that the care line has helped throughout the years. But instead, I'll leave it and just tell you that it has been unbelievably instrumental in helping our most vulnerable get through COVID and helping our new Ukraine friends get settled here in Richmond. I've seen it with the Federation's Jewish Community Relations Committee, the JCRC. Over the past 2 years alone, the JCRC has helped our synagogues and our agencies secure over $3 million in grants so that we can be safe going to synagogue and agencies and events like this. Federation supports programs at the Weinstein JCC to ensure that our elderlies maintain all of their social and communication skills, because it's well documented that the older we get, we have to remain social, or it increases the chances of depression and decreases the lifetime of independent living. And we support Holocaust survivors and help subsidize them when needed with their food and medicine and medical equipment. I could keep going. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I haven't even scratched the surface. But what I do want to talk about is the last 3 weeks and what Federation has done, because that really underscores the importance of our annual campaign, especially given the war and the rise in anti-Semitism. Literally moments after the attack on October 7, Daniel and all of the hardworking staff at Federation were already on the phone talking with local law enforcement to make sure that we were all safe. They kickstarted the Israel Emergency Campaign. They organized the rally that most of you probably attended at the Weinstein JCC. We had over 1,000 people in attendance in less than 48 hours notice. You can imagine the logistics in that one. They rebranded this event that they've worked months for. They rebranded it in like 3 days. And then came the 400% rise in anti-Semitic acts as compared to the same 3-week period last year. The ADL's Jonathan Greenblatt said earlier this week, we are currently experiencing a Category 5 hurricane of anti-Semitism throughout this country. So what did Federation do? Well, I've mentioned the Hillels and Chabad on campus. They've reached out to all of the Hillels to work closely with them, the university presidents, the university police, and all the law enforcement. They began working all of those contacts. Earlier this week, at the urging of the JCRC, Governor Youngkin issued an executive order allowing expedited security grants totaling $2.7 million. all of that list of stuff since October 7th, none of that happens without the annual campaign. To be successful, I don't care if it's nonprofit or for-profit, you have to have capital, infrastructure, and relationships, not only for the day-to-day, but also to be able to effectively deal with the unexpected and the emergencies. We're doing that thanks to you all. We need to continue to be able to do that at a greater scale. So we've got a lot of work to do, and to meet today's growing challenges, and to touch more lives. And it all starts here, right now, tonight. So I'm going to leave you with two thoughts. First is the blue side. We have to support Israel now and for however long this war may take. I am asking you tonight to make the largest charitable contribution that you have ever made. I don't care what the dollar amount is. Whatever you think is a good number, make it higher, add a zero. Be uncomfortable in the amount, but be comfortable in knowing that all of your dollars go to preserve our homeland and to help those who desperately need it. Second thought, the white side of the pledge. We have to support our local federation. We have to. It's the pillar of Jewish Richmond. It has to have the ammunition that it needs to strengthen Jewish identity, to foster Jewish continuity, and to inspire connections in Israel and around the world. Now is not the time to decrease your gift because you're giving so much to the Israel campaign. Now is not the time to only increase your gift modestly. Now is the time to give dramatically to the annual campaign. And if you've never given before, it's time to start. You'll be glad you did. Thank you all very much. While you're tending to your cards, I'm going to go call my mom. So, thank you.
The event hosts will be going around collecting the cards. Thank you. I have mine up here. Lisa. Oh, and an update for y'all. I just got word from Daniel Staffenberg that any gift to the emergency fund will be matched through November 15th. So thank you. You just doubled your gift. I always loved growing up in synagogues because we didn't go around and make collections. We had dues, and that was always unusual to my non-Jewish friends. Y'all paid dues? I don't understand dues. Now I kind of feel like I know what they were talking about. have the privilege of introducing our next speaker. So we're going to give you one more minute to make your gift and give it to the event hosts, please, that are coming around. Thank you, everyone, for giving so generously tonight. You truly are the light in the world right now that Charlie spoke of. Wynn spoke of. Both of them spoke of. Like I said, I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Yehuda Kurtzer, our keynote for tonight. Dr. Yehuda Kurtzer is the president of the Shalom Hartman Institute. Yehuda is recognized as one of the leading thinkers and authors on the meaning of Israel to American Jews, on Jewish history and Jewish memory, and on questions of leadership and change in American Jewish life. He is the author of Shuvah, The Future of the Jewish Past, which offers new thinking to contemporary Jews on navigating the tensions between history and memory, and the co-editor of The New Jewish Canon, a collection of the most significant Jewish ideas and debates of the past 2 generations. He is also the host of Hartman's Identity Crisis podcast, which can be found at identitycrisispod.com. It is my distinct honor to introduce Dr. Yehuda Kurtzer.
It's a delight and it's an honor to be with you all here tonight and to get to witness what it looks like when a community like this fully comes together. It's an extraordinary turnout. And to get another witness, another glimpse, as I've had the benefit of seeing in traveling around the country in person and virtually over the past month, of how the Jewish community actually organizes and mobilizes. It was one of the first speakers alluded to this earlier, but there's so much power in these rooms right now, and they are reminders to us that the first act of leadership and the first act of peoplehood are the same. They're just showing up. There is no such thing as peoplehood and solidarity if we don't all show up together. And in the Jewish community, to be a leader, the first thing you do is you show up. I mean that sometimes as a joke. It's literally like, if you're here, you're a leader. But in practical terms, what it really means is that to be a leader is to stand up, to show up and say, I'm ready to be committed. It's hard to know where to start in reflecting on the past few weeks and in starting to consider what the agenda for Jewish life is supposed to look like for the foreseeable, uncertain future. It's genuinely hard to know where to start. I feel that we're caught at an intersection right now between immediate memory of the recent, most profound trauma in Jewish history that many of us have lived through. That it happened literally less than a month ago. We are caught at an intersection between that experience that many of us are still trying to process, still trying to understand, and are still undertaking the act of witnessing every single day on the news and on social media. And on the other hand, we are caught at the precipice of an unbelievable amount of uncertainty that still faces the Jewish people. No speaker tonight or anywhere could allude to any foreseeable future when we know that this crisis is going to be over. I happened to be in Israel. I flew there the Saturday night after October 7th. I had a ticket already. My work is divided between North America and Israel. The campus of the Shalom Hartman Institute is in Jerusalem, and I already had plans to go be in Jerusalem to teach kids at our Gap Year program that brings together Americans and Israelis, to teach American rabbinical students who are studying in Israel, and simply to be with my colleagues. I ordinarily fly United, but for whatever reason, this time I had bought a ticket on El Al. And when October 7th happened, I felt I had gotten a golden ticket, a seat that would enable me to actually fly to Israel in the middle of this crisis to be with my people. And I felt something walking around in Israel that I've never seen or experienced before. It helped me understand a text that I have heard and read many times in my life, but never fully internalized. The phrase from Psalm 23 of what it means to walk in the valley of the shadow of death. In Israel, a week after the massacre, not only were there thousands of people dead, not only were there thousands and thousands of people actually sitting Shiva. I went to visit one Shiva of a family friend whose daughter had made Aliyah, married a young man who was still in the military, and a year later, on October 7th, charged from his base towards the south, rescued a lot of people, saved lives, and was killed in action. In that family's home, there were 9 people sitting Shiva. A young man who was 21 years old, his wife, his 2 parents, and his 6 siblings. Helped me understand the sheer magnitude of what it meant for a country to be so deeply immersed in so much tragic death. And at the same time, it wasn't just a valley of the shadow of death in the sense of all of the death that had already afflicted Israelis and in the society that was around them, but the shadow of death in the sense of all of the fear of what was going to come next. To watch 350,000 young Israelis, 150% of those who were called up to duty. That meant on top of almost 100% enlistment of those who were called, an additional 50% hire of volunteers, signing up instantly to run to protect their people. Israelis stand now amidst the valley of the shadow of death. I've never felt like I've been at many Shiva houses. I'm sure many of you have done that as well. It's the most basic act of loving kindness that we do for each other, is we show up when our people are suffering. Our tradition has a lot to say about how you show up when your people are suffering. When you show up to a Shiva, you're not supposed to start the talking. You're supposed to be there to listen. What you're definitely not supposed to do at a Shiva is to show up and theorize about what the person did that might have merited their death. That's why so many of us have had such a deep and visceral response to many in the international community and here who want to make the conversation about what happened on October 7th one about context and fault. To many of us, that feels like somebody showing up at your Shiva, asking you how your relative died, and then asking them what they did to deserve it. We don't act that way at Shiva. To be in Israel was to feel the behaviors of Shiva as though they were actually out in the street. People speaking in hushed tones. You know, many restaurants were actually closed the week after October 7th, partly because people are mourning, partly because when you take 350,000 young men and women between the ages of 18 and 42, a lot of bars, restaurants, security guards are just not there. And so restaurants, in some cases, had hours. We're going to be open from the hours of 10 and 2, and it reminded me of the synagogue email. Shiva hours are between 10 and 2. An enormous sense of palpable and visible grief. This weekend, we come up on the Shloshim. I've been thinking a lot with these metaphors of what happens around Jewish death. In the first few days when someone has died, you're actually exempt from a lot of obligations. Our tradition suggests, how could you possibly have the focus or the mindset to be able to pray when you need to bury your dead. So the tradition compassionately tells us, don't worry about it. Focus on what you need to do. I felt that the first week of this tragedy. I couldn't focus on anything, and I felt like the tradition was saying to us, it's okay. Mourn. Be in the place of grief. And then we go through Shiva. Our tradition invites us to be with those who love us and those who we love. It invites us to show up sometimes. This is what you do. You can miss the wedding, but don't miss the Shiva. Reminds us to be back together, to enact solidarity and peoplehood together with one another. And then we get to Shloshim, one of the first markers, a month after someone passes, where we start marking off time. It's been a month, and then for close relatives, it will be 11 months later when the first year of mourning ends. But one of the other things our tradition tells us about the end of mourning is you don't say Shiva is over. You don't end Shiva. What you say is, I got up. And I think the tradition is telling us, by saying you don't end Shiva, you get up from Shiva, that we know the grief doesn't go away, the trauma and the sadness doesn't go away, but that we are obligated to start integrating the grief and the trauma into our lives and to start walking again in the world, trying to figure out what of that grief and trauma do we continue to hold on to, and what of it impels us to move forward. Right now, there are still Israelis who are sitting Shiva, and there are going to be Israelis sitting actual Shiva for months to come as they discover and identify more bodies, and as our soldiers, many of them every day, are dying in this war. But collectively, I think we are in a period of getting to the Shloshim and beginning to get up and to ask not how do we leave all of that grief and trauma behind, but how do we begin to assimilate it? How do we begin to let it inform who we are supposed to be as we walk through this world? The agenda before us is massive. Israel is fighting, and I would say the Jewish people are fighting a war on many fronts. Israel literally is fighting a war against Hamas in Gaza. That's the one we know. Israelis are in fear about a second front of the war in the north. Israel, I believe, is officially at a state of war with Yemen. There's fear of a regional war as it may materialize. Those are the obvious fronts of where this war is being fought. But I think many of us feel and know that there are other fronts of this war that feel more proximate to us. There's a profound ideological war that is being fought on the internet. There's a profound PR war that is being waged on social media. There are ways in which American Jews ourselves are being brought in against our will for a rethinking of our place within the context of the American project, because not just of our loyalties to Israel, but simply of our Jewishness itself. I didn't think I was going to mention this because I didn't know it was going to happen, but I have a witness that it happened. As I was walking here, I'm in Richmond for all of a day. I'm just a regular Jew with a kippah. I don't even have like a pin on me. But some schmuck with walking his dog sees me and says, "How dare you support a racist state committing war crimes?" Whatever. I knew I was coming to the event. I was talking to Mark. We were having a good time. It doesn't affect me that much, but you suddenly start to feel, like it or not, you are being brought in a set of fights and conflicts that you didn't invite and didn't anticipate. It strikes me that there are several of these wars that Israel must win and that the Jewish people have to win. Israel absolutely must win the war against Hamas. And what's terrifying about that war is that it presents itself as a war against an enemy, but it is dangerously a war against a set of ideas. A concrete enemy is defeatable. Ideas are much harder to defeat. Israel has to prevent, and if necessary, win a regional war at its northern border. And the other war that Israel must win, and I will talk about this more, is Israel right now also has to win a war against its demons. Both Israel, the Jewish people, must not allow this war to become a war against the Palestinian people. Israel cannot allow this war, and we can't either, to become a Muslim-Jewish fight. But those are demons in the Israeli psyche and in the Jewish psyche that must be defeated precisely in order for Israel to be able to win the fights that it has to fight. But it's also possible that some of these wars Israel will not win and might not have to. I've started to give up on the sense that Israel is going to win a PR battle or even the ideological battle for the hearts and minds of parts of the globe. I think Israel has largely lost that war. And the truth is, it might be that it's a war that's uncomfortable to lose, but it might be a war whose loss we can absorb. Israelis, by and large, feel this way. Israelis are furious that the international community, not its governments, who broadly support the state of Israel right now, but that many in the international community believe that it is the villain. But Israelis overwhelmingly will say, we would sooner win the war against the enemies we need to defeat than convince other people that we are right. It's a position that we as American Jews might have to consider, that we may be uncomfortable in a set of relationships and alliances here, but ultimately supporting Israel in the fight that it actually has to win. But I want to focus most of what I want to talk about now about our obligations as a Jewish community, because after all, to be a Jew is to walk through the world looking around and asking, how am I obligated? That's what it means basically to be a Jew, at its best. We're in the Torah portions these days about the story of Abraham, who is really our template for what it means to be a Jew and a human being. The rabbis describe what made Abraham so exceptional, that Abraham was the individual through whom God decided to give God's promise. What was different about Abraham? The Bible actually itself doesn't tell us. It doesn't say Abraham was fantastically special, Abraham was good looking. This was the thing that Abraham had. So the Midrash fills it in. Midrash tells the story about Abraham, describing him as a man, it's like a man who walks along and sees a building aflame, a birad doleket, a building on fire. You know, a lot of people walk through the world and see catastrophe and danger, and they walk on by. They say, it's not my problem. I'm sure someone else is dealing with it. The rabbis say, in this parable, one person walks by and says, who's in charge here? Worries and wonders, who's going to take responsibility for this building on fire? And then once somebody yells it out, the owner of the house looks out and says, oh my God, the building is on fire, I better deal with it. The rabbis say, that's Abraham. Abraham walked through the world and demanded, who's in charge here? And when God finally heard a human being saying, I want to be responsible, I notice and I see, that's when God said, you're my partner. To be a Jew is to be a person who sees things on fire and says, who's in charge and how am I responsible? I want to suggest tonight that we have a fourfold moral map of challenges in front of us, all of which are going to take profound obligations require of us and are a complicated story for us to have to navigate. The first challenge before us is one of Jewish peoplehood. On this one, I gotta say, I didn't expect it, but we're doing great. I and my colleagues at the Hartman Institute for decades now have been worried about whether the muscle of Jewish peoplehood, the muscle of Jewish solidarity, had perhaps weakened, atrophied. We've talked for years about the growing distance that so many American Jews have towards Israel. We've talked for years about the conflict between so many American Jews about Israel. We worried whether there would be a crisis that would come along at some point in our history, and would we actually answer the call? Some of you will remember this. I don't really. The last great moment of Jewish solidarity in America It was 1987, the Rally for Soviet Jewry, the March on Washington. It was that's like kind of the last great moment. And before that, maybe Entebbe, and then you're going back to 67. Those were moments in our history when the Jewish community knew to organize and mobilize. In 1947, when the Federation system built its campaign saying, we need to build a state of Israel and we need to build it now, 1947, the Federation system raised $1.5 billion in today's dollars. By the way, they did it with an old Federation trick. You know what they said? It's a one-time ask. In 1948, they came back again and raised $2 billion. And in 1949, they raised $2.5 billion. At different eras of Jewish history, Jews intuited the responsibilities of solidarity. And what are those responsibilities? They are showing up, as we are doing. Synagogue attendance in America over the past 3 weeks is, I think, higher in total than it's been in decades. Students are showing up at Hillel in record numbers. You don't see those stories on the news. What you see is protests on campus. You don't see students showing up and looking to be together in community with one another. Those are also behaviors of solidarity. Jews are mobilizing politically in ways we've never seen before. We've been tested, and we are doing well. But our challenge number one is, will it hold? There's a lot of, one of the misapprehensions of the media right now is that the Jewish community is far more divided than it currently is. And that's because there's a small sector of the Jewish community that is not standing with the rest of the mainstream Jewish community and has a different message and is showing up in numbers that they've never had before, the protests of 500 or 1,000 people. But the vast majority of American Jews are not identified with those causes. But you don't get a news story that says 500 people went to shul. You don't get a news, for some reason, I don't really understand it, there were 142 pro-Israel rallies the week of October 7th, and none of them were covered by the Associated Press. Doesn't matter. What we have to focus on is that we're doing great around solidarity now, but it's not obvious as a war continues to wage itself. It's not obvious as Israelis are going to emerge divided, as Israelis will be, about how the war is being prosecuted and its choices and its mistakes, whether we as a Jewish community are going to be able to maintain a solidarity agenda, whether we're going to use moments like this to welcome people in or to hold people to loyalty tests, whether we're going to use a moment like this to say, you can only be here in times of shared suffering, but we don't find a way to unlock the connection between shared suffering as a starting point and perhaps shared joy and responsibility as the future of what Jewish peoplehood and solidarity are supposed to mean. Item number one is peoplehood and solidarity. The second component on our moral map in front of us is about Jewish power. Number one is peoplehood, number two is power. The Jewish people in the state of Israel right now are fighting a just war. The fact that it is a just war does not mean that every aspect of what the state of Israel does is going to be just. That is its responsibility to fight. The IDF holds itself to a code of ethics based on Jewish tradition and based on the classic philosophical tradition of ethics of war. One of the things we should be a part of is figuring out what does it look like to both support Israel in fighting a just war and being on the side of encouraging the state of Israel to fight a just war justly. What we have to combat outside of our community are those who believe that any expression of power is immoral. That's not a Jewish idea. It goes back to the book of Genesis. When God creates human beings in the image of God, what God is saying is you are actually invested in being people who are supposed to use power and agency responsibly. You're just not supposed to murder other people, but you are supposed to have dignity. Christian tradition came along and said, actually, it's more moral to turn the other cheek. When you get struck, not to fight back. But Jewish tradition responded to that and said, no. To be a person with dignity means that you're actually supposed to fight back, protect yourself, in moments in which you are threatened. We have to be able to articulate a clear moral position around Judaism and power, and also be the types of people with the fortitude to say, just because we have power doesn't mean that that power can be used indiscriminately. The third piece of our moral agenda, this is when it's going to be a hard thing to hear, is sovereignty. Zionism has given the Jewish people the gift of running a whole country. It's like something that our ancestors would have dreamed of. We only know about it from the Bible. But when you run a whole country, you are responsible for everything that happens in that country. One of the things that most pains me right now as a passionate Zionist is that there is an outbreak of violence by settlers in the West Bank against Palestinians. There is a dangerous situation in which Palestinian citizens of Israel who pay taxes, who vote in elections, who are 20% of the Israeli population, are experiencing terrible discrimination in the Israeli streets, including colleagues of mine who work at the Zionist Shalom Hartman Institute. I went to visit, as part of my Shiva visits, my friend in Zichron Yaakov. She's a left-of-center Zionist living in the north of Israel. She's building a new house down the block. After October 7th, her contractor said, "I'm not coming unless you're there to protect me." Arab Israeli from the neighboring village. For what it's worth, my friend is 4'11". So I'm not sure that there's much that she was going to be able to do, but what she was saying was, we're Israeli citizens, we need to be in this together. Part of the responsibility of sovereignty right now is for us to be Zionists who support Israel, not merely in being able to fight Hamas and eradicate it, but to represent a Zionism that is humane, that is humanist, and that lives up to the full vision of what the State of Israel was supposed to do for the Jewish people. And finally, the fourth agenda item for us is democracy. For the 10 months between January and October 6th, the main dividing line in Israel was the question of the future of Israeli democracy. 65% of Israelis opposed the judicial reform that was being pushed on them by the Israeli government. Many of those same people pivoted on October 7th from protesting the government to building the social safety net to support the State of Israel. I'll give you the example of my friend Effie. Effie is a professor of medieval history. From January until October, he spent the bulk of his time organizing the protest movement in Jerusalem against the government. On October 7th, his 3 adult sons were called into duty, and he turned the same mobilization effort that was running the protest movement into the system that was providing supplies to soldiers who needed them and to support families from the South. His attitude about democracy never changed. It is not that he believes now in the government. In fact, part of the reason he's doing what he's doing is because he feels the government isn't doing enough. And it's the responsibility of a citizenry. Ultimately, in a democracy, the citizen is sovereign. It is the responsibility of the citizens to turn around and hold up their country. But Israeli democracy is going to be tested. And we as American Jews who care about Israel, who care about its future as a Jewish and democratic state, must keep democracy as part of the agenda of what it means for us to support Israel right now. And that's true both for supporting Israel, and it's true here as well. If we are going to eradicate anti-Semitism in this country, it is going to be by reminding America that it is the liberal democracy that it is supposed to be. That is what we did at an earlier time in our history. We leaned into helping America be the America it was supposed to be. And it is through a commitment to democracy that we as American Jews are going to be safer. Peoplehood, power, sovereignty, democracy. I'm not coming here tonight with a simple message. You know the simple messages. The simple messages are strong enough to get you to write big checks, and that's really important. But the long-term challenge in front of us is a really complicated one. I want to challenge you, and I want to invite us to resist reducing the question of Israel to something that is simple, to resist turning the moral challenges that we face, the Jewish people, to only one of these, When someone says, I refuse to talk about democracy, I only want to talk about power, I know what your politics are. And the same is true in the reverse. If we're going to be a Jewish people that understands that the state of Israel is the project of the Jewish people worldwide and is also responsible to all of its citizens, we are going to have a complicated and deep moral relationship to all of what confronts us. We're also going to have to remember that the easier things to raise money for right now are doing things that are about protecting Israel, and the easy things to do emotionally right now are things that feel like supporting our friends and family. But there's also going to be a long-term work ahead of us that's not about protective and it's not about supportive, but is about constructive. Zionism was and always will be the project of the Jewish people's imagination. There's a lot to build, not just to protect, to support, and to defend. I oftentimes feel, and I especially did before October 7th, that we are the inheritors of our ancestors' nightmares, and at the same time we have power and privilege at our disposal that they would only have dreamed of. That's what it means to be an inheritor of Jewish history. On October 7th, I felt like I understood their nightmares more. I was awakened to feeling like that story of anti-Semitism, of fear, of pogrom, was now something that I had firsthand approximation of. But we still have agency and ability beyond our wildest imaginations to shape Jewish history far more than our ancestors were capable of. And I'll conclude with this. We simply don't get to choose the eras of Jewish history into which we are born. You don't get to decide which era of Jewish history you're born into. I've always felt that compared to virtually every other era of Jewish history, we got pretty lucky. We are born at a time with an extraordinary American Jewish community that, if it were not for the state of Israel, would probably be the best conditions that Jews have ever lived in history. It just happens to be at the same time that the Jewish people also have a successful sovereign state. In other words, we got to be born into the period of Jewish history with the two greatest success stories of political projects that the Jewish people have ever had. We don't get to choose what era we're born into, but we do get to choose what kind of Jews we want to be. You don't get to create all of the conditions that are around you, but you get to determine what kind of response you're going to have. Rabbi David Hartman talks about how there's two ways to view the world: an ethics of description, trying to understand why things happen. It's exhausting. It's a very different type of ethics, which is the ethics of response. Stop worrying about why things happen and start worrying about what you want to do in response. And I pray that we have the fortitude to be the leaders that the Jewish people need right now. Thank you very much.